The story of the Benin Bronzes is often associated with the punitive British expedition of 1897, when, in retaliation for the massacre of a party of 7 British envoys and their African bearers in January 1897, a British army of 500 men raided Benin Kingdom and seized thousands of very valuable plaques, busts, pendants and other sculptures from Oba Ovurame.
Bronze making in this kingdom is as old as the kingdom itself. We primarily were formed for the beautification of the palace as a guild, who were made to beautify the palace, to produce various artworks, to use them to beautify the palace. But as time went on, we saw that there were no form of documentation, no biro, no cameras, nothing. So we had to go into the process of documenting the history. Whatever transpired in this kingdom, we were documenting them by way of bronze making, putting them in plaque forms or other various art forms to show every particular event that took place in this kingdom.
These pieces made their way to dozens of museums in Europe and America, and for years, Europeans furiously debated how Africans, who had always been described as unregenerated and uncivilized, could make such fine pieces.
Our works were carted away, but when they came, they were marveled to see that people we assume to be uncivilized, that people who are illiterate, who does not have a standard, can do things like this. So it shocked them, and I think that even prompted them to steal, because I would call it steal. They stole what we produced and took it away.
In the days past, like what we are producing here, if you go outside the country, in other parts of the world, they are very interested in those handmade work. They have interest in it because they see that we have skill we can develop, we can make something with our hand and design a thing out which we did not use any machine for. We make it with hand and they come out in a different way and they have the joy. Many people do come from abroad to patronize or to buy from us in the days past. But because of the condition of the country now, some of those customers, we've lost them. They are no longer coming.
They soon settled on the theory that the Benin masters must have been taught by early Portuguese explorers. Of course, this was a ridiculous theory, considering that the early explorers like Diogo Siao, Del Cano, and many Portuguese traders who lived in Benin for a while did not leave any traces of highly evolved skills in metallery. Over time, it has been revealed that Africa, of course, had many great civilizations that made great art, from Kemet to Cuba, from Nok to Benin, and from Bamun to Chokwe. Many modern artists, from Picasso to Joseph Conrad and from Matisse to Kazan, later spent many hours poring over art styles for inspiration. Their work and the work of other fashion designers after them would point to Africa as the true source of these truly unique styles.
When our forebears were doing their jobs, like I told you, on a complete physical look, they settled down completely. That's why I tell you it takes 6 months to produce one piece. They settled down completely. If you see their job of old, and even what we do now with the so-called machines, they are still better off in terms of the finishing than the way we are now. But for the moment now, a lot of people are rushing to see that they sell to make money. Then they were not rushing. Nobody was pushing them to rush over what they take their time to be sure of completing what they want to complete, and they get that satisfaction from what they do, and it makes them proud.
Their work, and their work of fashion designers after them, would point to Africa as the true source of these truly unique styles. Today, as talks of restitution has picked up, there is still a lot of curiosity to know how the Benin Bronzes were made. The more famous pieces, like the seated lady at Tada, the Akonjo plastic dwarfs, the cockerels, the bronze head of Queen Mother, and even the Womonije head, have been copied thousands of times, some by foreign artists and some by artists from Ife and other parts of Nigeria. The Benin Bronzes are made using the lost wax process. The artist starts by creating a wax design. This piece is made with beeswax or other wax material. They then create a mold with sand or sandy soil that is held firmly in place with a wooden frame, making sure to leave an opening. Molten bronze is poured into the opening so that it melts away the wax and takes its place inside the sand frame. When the bronze cools, the artist takes the frame apart and cleans the sand to reveal the bronze piece. To be sure, the Benin Bronzes were not always necessarily bronze. The first pieces that were commissioned by Oba Uware were mostly in tin, brass and even iron artwork. This is because not enough bronze was mined in those days and smelting developed over time, so that it was a while before the blacksmith knew exactly how to separate impurities from the bronze. At the same time, there were many guilds in Benin that worked with all types of materials, from adobe to elephant tusk, and the bronzes that have become so popular.
Whatever materials we were using then for this purpose were all provided by the monarch himself, you know, because we have to buy a lot of materials like maybe the bronze that we use in casting, and then they come in form of manila, the ones that were used for enslavement of people that they cash into slavery. So we basically were not producing to sell. We were only producing for the palace. But as time went on, we were granted our royal charter by Oba Ogwola 1280 AD, at 1280 AD. So that was when, because the family became larger, so it was becoming a little bit more difficult for the palace to cater for everybody that are into the bronze work. So we were now permitted, but still with the instructions of the monarch, to produce and sell, to make our own gains in order to cater for the family.
It is believed that the bronze making technique was introduced by a man named Igwega. The work that he and other artists produced were mainly altar shrines. In Edo language, the bronzes are known as Saeya, which means to remember. Pieces like bronze heads were believed to be receptacles in which the Oba dwelled before he traveled to the next world. Every Oba had a duty to build a shrine for the just departed predecessor. The Obas commissioned virtually all the bronzes, which they kept in their shrines or homes, gifted or loaned out. Commoners were not allowed to own property.
We did not share this knowledge with outsiders apart from the family. Like the first bronze caster was Egwegai Ine, and he taught the children, and ever since then it was passed from father to son. No outsider is allowed to involve themselves in what we do here. So it has been a thing of the joy. You know what it takes to say, I made this. This belongs to me. You won't want to end it there. You want that continuity. That's why the parents, they teach their children. If you have 10 children, you have to teach them all to know how to go about this work, you know. And you start learning from the age of probably 6 years old till you are perfect enough to be able to handle things for yourself.
The art of making bronzes became more sophisticated over time. There was an early period, and you can see in the figures that there is still a lot of amateurism or lack of sophistication. This is followed by the middle period, where some masters start demarcating themselves from the rest. The bronze cock and this man with a cross is a clear example of art from this period. Then there is the late period with exquisite plaques depicting hunts, Portuguese soldiers, obas and scenes of daily life. The bronze half figure from Wumonije, as well as the bronze head from Wumonije. Favorites of copy artists are also from this classic Ife period. Interesting fact, not all bronzes made their way to Europe through looting. Some early European visitors to Benin commissioned pieces from the Benin masters. Some visitors were also gifted art pieces, which they took back to Europe. Another less known fact is that, due to the storage of bronze in Benin, metal had to be imported. Studies from 5 Atlantic shipwrecks suggest that Germany was the main source of metal for the production of pre-18th century minilas and ultimately the Benin Bronzes. The consistency in the metal composition of the bronzes suggests that African metal smiths were very selective about what metal they would use. The Manila hull from the Flemish trader that capsided in 1542 is a good example of how the metals were transported to Africa. This international trade shows that Africa was not that isolated. Benin Bronzes have made a fortune for the museums they were taken to. Returning them will be justice, but justice also means that all the great museums of the Western world would need to pay some form of proceeds for all the time that they kept these bronzes to the communities that these masterpieces were taken from.